Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Kavanaugh. Um, I'm a professor from University of Massachusetts, and I do research on evolutionary biology. And I hear that you have some questions about the new coronavirus, which is great because there are a lot of questions to ask, and it's good that you're asking them. So, like I said, there's lots of questions, and I'm just going to pick a couple of them that I got off of your list here to talk about. First one is a question that I really liked, which is how do you separate propaganda about the virus from what is real? So how do you know what to believe about the virus? There's a lot of information out there. So I first want to talk to you about where does the real facts come from? And that is trying to uh, separate what comes from science and how science is done from what is people's opinion and just a story that your neighbor might tell. So call it anecdote, right? So the scientists, so there's people all around the world who are doing experiments and trying to get primary data. So that's the ultimate source of the information that's the truth about it. So that's the facts that are coming from real observations. And the scientists are they're doing the experiments, and then what they do is they ask their colleagues, the other scientists, to review them. So they say, well, here's what I think, can you just check my facts here? Did I do anything wrong? Did I analyze it right? And then they have all this discussion, and they really come to what they think is the correct way to view whatever experiment they're doing, and then they publish it so that everybody can have access to that fact. And that's laid down as, okay, here's where the state of the art is on this question, right? And it's published in journals like this. I have some here. These are, so for example, here's one. It says how to build a cell from scratch. So this is, on the cover about cell biology. So this one is about electrons, and this is one that just came out about a new dinosaur that they found in amber. And there's all sorts of articles in these journals, and most of them are online, and there's hundreds of journals in all the specialties. Now, those are different from other magazines that you might see, which are, like this one, the New Yorker, and I have Wired magazine here. These might be reputable journalists, but they're taking the scientific facts and they might be interpreting them or putting their opinion on them, but there's going to be maybe fact-based journalism. That's probably what you're hearing. And the way that you tell that if that's reputable is basically by their reputation, right? Have they been around a lot? Are they believable? And they're trusted sources. So so scientists, maybe fact-based journalism that's from trusted sources are pretty easy to separate from someone's opinion and someone, maybe like a story from your neighbor, or maybe a religious belief or something. Those are personal, but there's sort of an in-between area that is a little bit trickier to understand, to separate. And that's where people use facts, some of the facts from true science, and they're telling you just enough little facts, and then they make a big jump to the conclusion. So they have like, here's a fact, it's documented in the science, here's a fact, this is documented, and then they make a big leap to a conclusion, and they're missing all that part in the middle, right? For example, they might say that the virus, this new coronavirus, has 96% similarity to bats in its genome, genes, and that's true, and that people in China eat bats. And that is true. There are some people that eat bats in China. And so they make the leap to saying that the bat eating people in China started this whole thing. And that leap is where there's a problem, because that's not what we know yet. We don't know a lot of things in that. So we can't make that leap. And in fact, it's most likely not that case. So that's going to lead me to where the next thing I want to talk to you about, which is some of your questions about where did the virus come from. That's an important question, not just because we want someone to blame, right? That's not the reason to know. The reason is first to track the history of the virus, to let us know sort of each step it took so we can understand how this happens, right? So we can kind of catch it maybe another time and try to find ways to stop it. And secondly, it's just simply how likely is it to happen again? So there's ways that the virus can evolve that make it more likely to evolve that way again, or there's ways that it's really unlikely that it's going to do that again because there's lots and lots of little steps that it has to take. So it's really important for us to know where it came from so we can know which of those scenarios is reality. So that story is now not known. It's being unraveled by scientists right now. So what do we know? First, you may or may not know that viruses, the way that they work is they infect cells. So they're little particles that have a little genetic material inside, so a little DNA or RNA. And the RNA it's got the message. So in this coronavirus, it's RNA, and that virus particle sticks to the side of a cell, and then it injects its genetic material into the cell, and then it tells that cell, you stop doing what you're doing and make a bunch of copies of me, make lots and lots of virus for me. And so it just hijacks that cell and says, make lots of copies, right? And then the cell breaks apart, and then there's all these copies of viruses, and all those viruses go out and infect other cells around it and do the same thing, and on and on. And that's how that infection starts in a body, right? So it's infecting the cells and going from one to the next. Now, during that event where it's infecting the cell, a couple things can happen. One is that there can be two different viruses. Oh, I actually have this. This is a ball we have here. So it kind of looks like the coronavirus, right? So it's a ball and it's got these little spikes on it. So these spikes are there's parts of the protein, and that's what sticks to the cell, right? So there can be some evolution of just that spike protein, right? That can make it stick to the cells better, to certain cells. So like, for example, stick to our lung cells better. So that can happen, that the parts of the virus can evolve over time as they're being transmitted from one animal to the next, or one human to the next. There can be some little mistakes that happen when it's going through that replication. Little mistakes can happen, and then the ones that are replicating a little bit faster kind of get an advantage, and then that evolution happens so that's more of those going forward. So that can happen. And then the other thing that can happen, that definitely happened in this case, is called a recombination event. So in that case, I have here two viruses. They're different viruses. So this one, say, is from a bat, and this one from a penguin. If viruses affect the cell at the same time, they can both inject their genetic material into the cell, and then while it's hijacking the cell and making replicates, that genetic material gets recombined. So parts of one virus get connected with another part, and then they make a new part, and then it gets packaged up and then moved on, and then repeats that. And so it's taking that new packaging, the new parts that are now together, and going on to replicate in another cell. And sometimes those recombination events make a successful virus, one that keeps going. Okay, so that's sort of what can happen. What happened in this particular virus? What they know is that 96% of the backbone of the virus is from a bat. So at some point, this SARS-CoV-2, the virus that's out there now, has a bat part that's from a bat, but the part that's from the spikes, there's actually part that's from a pangolin. So there was a recombination event at some point. And then thirdly, there's some other parts that make it really specialized to attack the lung cells, so that they're connecting very specifically to lung cells. So that's another piece, a little segment that had there's some kind of recombination. So what the scientists are trying to do now is figure out at what point did they recombine, at what point, you know, and was there evolution sort of within a bat or within another animal for a long time, and then it jumped to the human, or was it, did it jump to a human a long time ago, and then it evolved within the human to human, and then became, you know, some evolutionary event made it more pathogenic for humans, and the animal part was a long time ago. So those are the questions that are still not known right now. So that would be something you have to stay tuned. So there is definitely true that there's part bat. There is a very specific and highly similar part that is on the spike protein that's pangolin, but it doesn't explain everything about this human virus that we have here. Okay, so that part of the story, you'll have to stay tuned and listen to some of the good science coming out. All right, it was nice talking to you, and I'll see you another time.